Okay, hi, I'm Julie, and I'll be talking about genetically modified foods. And so, a genetically modified organism is an organism whose genome has been altered by the techniques of genetic engineering so that its DNA contains one or more genes that aren't normally found in there. So, by genetically modifying foods, the genes are altered at a genetic level to produce a better tasting, longer lasting, or more resistant product. And with this, my major claim is that about GM foods is that they are beneficial for consumers and society as a whole. So we've been eating GM foods for some time now, and not many of us even realize it. And then when we find out, we often become angered or uneasy because they're not labeled. So in a Nova documentary that I watched called Frontline Harvest of Fear, GM crops that are made pesticide resistant or ones that are fortified with vitamins are tested thoroughly for toxicity, and the chemistry is compared with that of non-GM foods so that they're made identical, or they're identical and safe. So I'll be getting into the safety of GM foods for consumers as one of my secondary claims. And my other secondary claim about GM foods being beneficial to the people and society is that genetically modified crops are an important part of responding to global food shortages. And according to the UN, the world population is expected to increase by 2.5 billion by 2050. And as a result, the supply of food will need to increase, and GM foods will be an efficient way of feeding the world. So going back to my first secondary claim, genetically modified foods are safe for consumers. GM crops can be fortified with vitamins, minerals, and proteins that they otherwise wouldn't have, which makes it healthier for consumers. And an example of GM food a food that has been genetically modified is the golden rice. And this is a rice that is genetically modified to produce a high percentage of provitamin A or beta-carotene in the grain. And this rice is beneficial to developing countries where there is a deficiency of vitamin A in children. And many children who are vitamin A deficient can often grow blind. And crops that can be fortified with such nutrients can fight deficiencies just like good ones. And GM crops also use less pesticides than non-GM crops. Pesticides do not have to be sprayed all over the field to ensure that the crops will not be damaged, and GM crops are injected with pesticide-resistant genes. So an example of a pesticide-resistant crop is called BT corn, which contains genes that produce certain toxins that are lethal to certain insects. So whenever those insects try to eat it, they will die, and then the toxins are considered to be much more selective and safer for humans than most conventional insecticides because they attack types that are found only in a few group of insects. And then, according to a study made from Colorado State University, there are no known adverse human health effects associated with BT. So it's absolutely safe for humans. And also, there is no evidence that GM foods are unsafe, as many would think. In 2001, the research directorate of the European Union Commission released a summary of 81 scientific studies over a 15-year period to determine whether GM products were unsafe or insufficiently tested, and none found evidence of harm to humans or to the environment. And my second supporting claim, genetically modified crops are an important part of responding to global food shortages. GM crops are injected with pesticide-resistant genes, thus mitigating crop shortages, and BT corn is an example of that, as I talked about earlier. And in 2005, the World Bank Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research estimated that biotechnology can increase the world's food production by 25% based on the precedent set by BT corn. And GM foods are important to supplying growing populations and its demand. A report from Transgenic Plants in World Agriculture says that GM technology can produce crops that will resist pests and they can be tailored to local growing conditions. such as places that have salty soil. And it can produce food that's more nutritious and stable in storage. And with the expected 2.5 billion population growth over the next few decades, GM foods will make a significant contribution in feeding the world. So to conclude, without knowing what GM foods are, GM foods might sound really scary to many, but all in all, they're beneficial to us consumers and society as a whole.
All right, the definition that you gave at the beginning is pretty solid, and you give us a little context for what we're hearing about. The proposition, I think, is phrased. It's got multiple parts in it in the dependent clause, so you want to simplify the last part of the proposition. The layout of the secondary claims is good, although, again, the phrasing, I think, is a little complex for an oral presentation. You actually kind of start making your argument in the preview, and then when you come back to the point, you kind of have to make the argument again. I think you want to keep those things separate. Maybe the argumentative part could be part of a more general background before you present those secondary claims. You also explained a little bit about what the controversy is, although I think that might also need to be developed a bit more. Signposting on the secondary claims was excellent. You did a good job on that, both on the first and the second point when you transitioned to it. You had some good challenge to what the naysayers were, the reservations that they had. You were pretty consistent about citing your sources. There were one or two places where there were examples that were given that I didn't get a source citation on, but the second example, for instance, on BT corn, they ultimately do provide a source citation on that, and I thought I'd appreciated that. And there's a pretty good diversity of information on those particular points. So I think the support for your points is pretty solid. On the presentation, you have to look down quite a bit, and you want to try and engage the audience a little bit more. All right. Thank you.